I will do that.
One more.
Where's the microphone? Okay. Natalie might use it to start things off. Check with her and see if she wants to use it to start.
More than we expected.
Yeah. Do you want to get things kicked off here?
All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Can you guys hear me in the back? It all sounds tinny to me, so. Okay, thank you so much for joining us today. We are in the throngs of trying to get ready for fiscal year end, and we wanted to make sure to have one more session regarding school level reporting. For those of you who are aware, maybe those of you who are not, we made some changes to our chart of accounts this year, and we're asking that school level reporting include location codes. We've had quite a few meetings with our districts to kind of go through. We had work groups earlier in the year that I know a lot of you attended. But that's the purpose of the session this morning, is to kind of do some refreshers, give you some updates on the changes to UPEFs, and give you some updates on how we're going to calculate those school level reports. A couple of housekeeping things real quickly. We have a lot of our LEAs are attending online today. So if you have a question, we're probably going to have a runner run around with the mics. The individuals online cannot hear anything if you don't use the mic. So please make sure, it's kind of like board meeting, please make sure that if you raise your hand, we'll run our mic over to you and Vaughn will answer your questions. So I'm going to turn the time over to Vaughn. Our plan today is to have our school level reporting discussion. It may or may not take 3 hours. If it doesn't, we'll take a break. If you want to go over some of the details, Vaughn's happy to stay and answer questions if you want to listen. And then beginning at 1, we're going to start with our charter update. It's largely the update that we gave the districts about 3 days ago. We wanted to make sure that everybody got the information from the legislative session and for the new fiscal year in the same week. So lunch is on your own, so just make sure you're back by 1 o'clock and we'll get going. Thanks.
Okay. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay. From the Every Student Succeeds Act that was passed in, I believe, 2015, and so it really is in effect now. The year that we're in now, it comes from there. Okay. Okay, I'll talk directly into it. It contains a requirement that the state education agency produce a report each year that shows the expenditures per student for each LEA and each school within that LEA. So we have to do a school level report. There are several requirements within there. It has to show actual salaries, not estimated or average salaries. It has to show actual salary amounts. And it also has to have a breakdown within there of state and local versus federal expenditures. So we need to be really sure that we have all of that information. Need to point out to you that a charter school with multiple location has multiple schools. That is not just, every charter is not one school. If you have 2 locations within your charter school, you will have to do a separate for each school. So if you use the location number within the chart of accounts, that will separate those out for you. Okay? Yes. Yeah. Brett.
So for charter schools, we have schools that have multiple campuses, but they have one location number. So how do you want us to report if we've only been assigned one location number?
We can get you more location numbers assigned. We just need to know which ones you have that are that way. Okay? So if you'll email that to us, we can get you more location numbers for those. So several times today I'm going to ask you to email me something. Please be aware when you email me things, I misspell both of my names. So when you go to put it in there, Vaughn is going to be V-O-N, not V-A-U-G-H-N. And Horton is T-I-N. We're tin, not a ton. And so H-O-R-T-I-N at schools.utah.gov. So if you need to email me something, make sure you get the email address right, because I don't respond to the emails I never receive. There's the reference in ESSA where you find the requirement for the school level reporting. So it's in section 111 or 1111, section H, 1C, and it's item X in that area. Okay. As we started working through this information, it becomes pretty clear pretty easily and very quickly that not everybody's going to understand the same report. And so it doesn't fit everyone that wants to look at it. If we give you the report that you guys want to see, parents don't understand it at all and can't figure out what we're telling them. And so we need to do multiple reports for this, and we'll show you the different levels that we're looking at and see if you think that that is adequate and what you can make from the rest of the information. The initial view is planned to be something that would be a parent level report that someone, just anybody off the street would see, but it's pretty much a 30,000 foot view of things and doesn't contain a lot of detail, but a lot of people don't want a lot of detail. They just want the quick, easy piece to look at. Then there's a more detailed one that would be used for anybody who's delving into the numbers a little farther and researchers. Does anybody have any ideas why this school level piece came into the law? Do you think that legislators thought that that was a really great idea?
Yes, I do.
You do? The national legislators? I don't think so. They're beset with a whole bunch of people who are asking about, they're wanting to advocate for specific issues, and they want specific information to be able to get to a lower level, so, and get more information. So we'll show you how these reports will be reported on here, and I think that you've got you'll get a page that has two reports, one on the front and one on the back. First one is this initial one. We're going to tell you, you can see on here what is there. This piece that's out on the side as a description will not be there on all of the reports. This is just for you guys up front knowing ahead of time what's coming in. And I know that it's too small. You should have a copy of this in your handout someplace. I know you don't yet, but there were three things that Natalie had to hand out. This one, what it does is it takes and it breaks down the information, and I'll show you what the different parts are, and you can look at it more when you get further into it. But what it does is it shows an enrollment number up here on the top, then it shows site level expenditures. What this will be is the things that come in with the school number on it will be coded to the site level expenditures. And you see they're broken down into federal and state and local. It shows those two numbers there, and then a total for things that are spent at the school. Then shared central expenditures are things that come through other functions, such as function 23, function 25, function 26. All of those will be shared expenses for each of the levels. You can see that there's some federal and some state and local, and then there's a total for that one Then there's a grand total down here that adds the site level and the shared expenses, okay? And so that gives you a total expenditure per student at that school. Then it comes down here and shows the things that are being excluded. And we'll be talking about the exclusions. But if you take the amounts that are the per student plus the exclusions, you should be able to come up with the same amount that shows on your financial statements. Then there will be a little explanation down here of what items are being excluded and an explanation of how you got the student number up at the top. There are different numbers that are used all over the place. Some places use ADA, which is average daily attendance. Some use ADM, which is average daily membership. We're going to be using the October 1 count from each school, okay? That's a static number. If we try to use ADM, that changes all over the place until the end of the year. And so we're just going to use the October 1 count. We'll talk more about that as we go along. Okay, we had to make some assumptions going into here, and whether they're good or not, you guys can tell us more later, but this is what we're going with for the time being. The data with the school number will be reported in that site level expenditure. Like we pointed out, there was the school specific piece and then the shared expenditures. Data with a number that can't be identified with a school will come in at that shared expense area. And so at your local level, you might use different location numbers for cost accounting purposes and to be able to put those in specific places. Maybe an item just for budgeting that you want to show for school districts, their shops or something like that, or the bus garage out in a separate number. Those will all come into the shared expenses for the school. Items from functions 23, 25, 26, 27, 3100 will all be reported at the district level. One of the problems that we've been running across with a lot of the charter schools is that several of them are buying services for their school lunch from another LEA. If you're doing that and not reporting your school lunch, that is a major problem for us, because your school's not going to show the proper numbers there. And one school looks underfunded, another school looks like they're getting way too much. You need to be showing your school lunch piece in there if your kids are eating lunch. You can't just leave it for somebody else because they're collecting the money for you. You need to show that in your reports. Yes, Tim. Brett, we need the microphone up here.
I can talk about it if you want.
It's up where?
So Vaughn, of number 2 and number 3 up there, which one wins? For example, if I have a work order in a school that's coded to that school, but it's in function 2600, which one wins? Because it's going to have a school location, but it's going to be in 26.
It will be coded to the school.
Okay.
The first level is, does it have a valid school number on it? Okay, that'll be the first cut. The next one will be what the function is.
Vaughn?
Yes.
Assuming that we do the 23, 25, 26, 27, and 31, and then the support services down to the shared district level, that means that under the school level would include the 1,000, of course, for direct instruction, and then the 2,200 support, and also the 2,400 for the principal or the school direction.
If they have a valid school location number.
Right. Well, single school, it's easy.
Okay, yeah, for some of those it would, but for a school district that has, say, a librarian who's in the school, that will show in the school level piece. But a supervisor over the libraries that's coded to a district level code will show up in the shared expenses.
Good. Just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Yeah. Is this pretty clear for everybody? Those of you that have school lunch that you're getting the lunches from somebody else, you need to contact us and let us help you work out a way to work around that, because we're not getting true expenses for your school. Okay, the amounts reported at the district level will be divided by the number of students in the entire district. And then, so if you noticed in that example that we had up there, the per student at the shared expense level was the same for every school. Okay, so you're adding up all of those expenses and then dividing by the total number of students in the LEA. So that number will be the same for every school and will be added in there, okay? Okay, capital expenditures and debt service will be excluded expenditures. Part of the reason for this is that they really terribly skew your numbers. How many of you have gotten a nasty comment from us because you exceeded your budget, and the only reason you exceeded your budget was because you floated a bond that year to pay for the school, and you forgot to amend your budget to show the amounts that were coming in from the bond? That's a fairly common thing, but they do skew the data. When you're building a new building, you have lots of expenditures for a year or two, and then all of a sudden that drops off. And so somebody who's looking at a 10-year average for your school is going to go look at that and say, what the heck? Where does this come from? So those will be excluded. We will be using the October 1 enrollment for the student counts. Those are all part of the assumptions, okay? That one's easy to get and easy to work with. Okay, each LEA's data will tie back to their financial statements if you take into account the excluded items and the per student amounts times the number of students, okay? Okay, here is an example LEA using that exact same thing that we just did. We've got 4 elementary schools, 2 middle schools, and a high school in this example, and you can see my pointer won't point up here on the TV screens, so I'm going to have to point, I'm sorry. But you can see the student numbers up here on the top. You can see the federal dollars at the school level and the state and local at the school level, with a total state and local down here. You can see that these are fairly close, but they're not exactly the same for these 3 elementary schools, but this one's way off from those. That's because it's an S school and ends up with extra funding from other things that could skew that. What are some other things that could skew those, especially for a school district? Title I or special ed cluster units in a particular school could cause that to be higher than another school. And so what's going to happen is people are going to look at that and say, what's with this school? Why are they so much higher than everybody else? And without any explanation, and just off this one here, you have no idea why. Down here under the district level expenditures, you can see that this amount is the same for all of them all the way across. Both the federal and the state and local is the same number, because it's just the total for the whole district split by the number of students there. Then you come out with the total number down here at the bottom that shows. So that's very much like that first example, but doesn't have the explanation that was out to the side of that, okay? So the next level is a bit more specific and carries more information and should be more helpful to you guys. This is a medium-sized district, has a number of schools in it, but we've added some extra information in here. You have not only the number of students in the school, but you also have a percentage of economically disadvantaged students, the number of ELL students, and the number of percent of students with disabilities. That gives you a little bit more information to look at and tell whether or not the numbers are why they are the way that they are. We also have the number of teacher FTEs and the number of teachers per student. That's just a calculation of your enrollment over here divided by the number of students. But then you have more detailed breakdown that fits very much with your function type of things. Your shared expenses are up here, up at the top. And so you have one subtotal right there that's a subtotal A and a subtotal B that's over here, and then a subtotal C over here, and your total expenditures per student, they're out on the end of the thing showing that it's A, B, and C added together, okay? But these relate closer to the account numbers that you have been using to send things in, and you should be able to pull those together and be able to show those. For a single charter school that only has one location, it'll be fairly simple because it's all on one line. But for LEAs that have more than one location, this could be extremely helpful. One of the things that we'd point out on here, it gives you a chance to, if you look at this ahead of time, gives you a chance to validate your data. So for this one, when we pulled it, you'll notice that the ELL student percentage in this one school is 269%. How do you get to 260%? You can't. So that points out quickly that there's an error in the data that's being supplied. They triple counted all of the ELL students in that school. So it's a good double check for you to look at and see where things are. But a report like this will be provided for each LEA, okay? So it can help you in finding some of the mistakes and things that you want to look at. We'd like to do this with the 2018 data in December of this next year, but the real requirement from ESSA is that we put up a statement on our page explaining what we're doing, what steps we're taking to get to the school level reporting for 2018, but 2019 we have to have the actual reports up and live. We'd like to produce the 2018 and allow you to look at them and see what kind of data would be reported for your school so that you can look at it, dig into it, and try to figure out, is this really telling the story that we have for our school, or is it not showing what we need it to show? Any questions there so far? Okay. Okay, why do people want this data? They want to do comparisons from school to school. And why would they care about that? Anybody have any ideas? There's always I know when we had a similar type of thing when I worked at Granite School District, there was a big accounting firm that came in and they were going to provide all of this data. They took all of the data, then randomly picked 2 schools and then did a big report on it. And 3 students from a university were doing their doctoral thesis on it. And what came out in the newspaper was the East Side School gets more money than the West Side School. As we dug into it and looked at them, actually the school that they were counting as the East Side School was actually west of the other school, but it had a boundary that went up around on the east side of it for at least 2 blocks. But was actually an old part of Kearns, and the other one was in a new part of Kearns, and it was a brand new school. All of the kids walked to the school. The other one, most everybody was bused in. They had a cluster unit for a special ed class. All of the special medical needs kids were coming to that school. So they had nurses and lots of special ed teachers and everything else that would drive the costs up higher for that school. When they finally got down to looking at the data, all that we learned from it was that different is different. But people like to make those school comparisons and want to look at and see what your administrative costs are. So There are questions about funding. Are we getting adequate money to our ELL schools? Are we getting enough money to those special ed students? Do we have special ed balances that are being carried over? What are the different questions that you guys can come up with about funding? I'm afraid that once these reports get out that you'll have different advocacy groups that'll be trying to dissect them and come up with all kinds of questions for you. The advocacy groups are pushing for it heavily, mostly from special ed and ELL groups. It is a good tool, however, for your board to understand and see what you're doing. It could answer questions about, are our schools being equally funded? Are they getting the supports that they need? This would give you a chance to show some of that information. It also gives you a chance to show if you're targeting special populations. Are you receiving money for ELL students, for example, and are you actually spending it to help those ELL students? Or are you just taking it into your school and spending it on everybody? It also gives you a chance to show whether you're doing an efficient job of allocating money to the different schools. So it depends on what you want to see from this data and where it's going to be used. Those who use it best will get to tell their story first. So hopefully each of the LEAs will have an effective way of looking at their own and making sure that it tells the story that they want. You know, inquiring minds just want to know. Okay. One thing that would be a really interesting one is to try taking various roles to look at the data. Okay. So you have that sheet in front of you with the test data on it. Let's look at it as a news reporter. What story would you come out of that with if you were looking at that report and you're a news reporter? What would your story say in the newspaper the next day? If you're just using the example LEA, the first one there, is there any differences?
I can see an article already that says school district or student expenditures not equal in Davis County.
Okay, pull that, getting the...
So I can see an article already that says school level or student level expenditures not equal in Davis County.
Yeah.
There's the
Yeah,
headline.
they're going to see that there are differences there. Is it apparent from that report what the differences are or how to look at them? News reporters just want to write a story about something, and they'll find their own way to look at it based on what they're looking for. So let's try another one. Okay, let's say that you're the principal of the highest funded high school in your district. What are you going to see from that report?
No friends.
He says, no friends. The board wants to take money from me, or whatever there is. You know, each person's going to look at it a little differently. Okay? Next one, if you're from an elementary with the greatest number of ELL students, what are you going to see in that report? Why don't they give me more money? Okay. Okay, if you're the PTA president in the lowest funded middle school, what are you going to see in that report? Why are my kids getting cheated? Why aren't they getting the same amount that somebody else is getting? Or why is so-and-so getting more than they are? Have we ever seen that in any schools? We had a board that had infighting amongst themselves because they had two high schools in their district, and one was getting more money than the other. So Okay, if you're a parent of a special education student in a particular school, are you going to have a different view of that number than all of the other schools? Okay. If you're a teacher in a necessarily existent small school, are you going to see that different than another one? Or if you're a teacher in a school with a class of 45 kids in every class, how are you going to look at that? And if you see, even if you see the detailed one with the dollar amounts per school, how are you going to see that? Why do I still have 45 kids in every one of my classes, and the teacher with 18 kids in her class is getting extra money? Why is that? They're going to have a lot of different questions, and there will be people who will be coming to you for answers. So as you see this data, I'd recommend that you try looking at it from different points of view and try to anticipate some of the questions that could be coming your way, because detailing this information on a school-by-school basis is going to cause different questions from different people. Okay? Does everybody understand that well? Okay. How do you use this data to your advantage? Okay. Okay.
I didn't mean to interrupt. I was just
That's
wondering,
fine.
when is this report going to be available to the schools? Is it at the same time each year?
It will be available in December of each year.
Each year. Thank you.
Okay. We're hoping to be able to put it out for 2018 data in December of 2018. But it'll depend on if we can get all of the resources we need to do that. But it'll be published each year in December. So, okay.
Will it be published ahead of time, kind of like school grades are, superintendents know? Sorry.
Natalie, will there be an early publishing of this for LEA leadership to be able to look at it before it's released to the public? Brett?
Battery's almost dead. Yes, I mean, I think we try to follow the same pattern that we do with school grading. Since we're still trying to align all the resources and figure out how we're going to do the calculation, we're not sure how that'll work in the first year. But I think that we would try to give you a heads up. I don't know if Vaughn talked about having did you get into the putting it on the report card yet?
No.
Okay, we can talk about that in a little while.
Okay. Ways that you can use this to your advantage. This report can show how you are following your strategic plan. If you have part of your strategic plan that you're trying to address the needs of special ed students a little higher this year, or that you're trying to work stronger with your ELL students, you can show where that funding's going and what you're doing specifically to cover that. Are there areas of emphasis that are showing through your data in here? What are the obstacles to changing how funds are allocated? Okay, and can changes be made? One of the obstacles for school districts is their negotiated agreements with the teachers. Can you move teachers from one school to another so that you could even out the salaries around, or send the older teachers to the hardest to reach students so that they have greater experienced teachers working with the most difficult to reach students? Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. So there are obstacles and there are advantages to each of these. So please think about those. Are we addressing the most pressing needs? Are we getting those items out to the areas that need it the most? I'm sure that the advocacy groups will be making enough pressure on you that you'll get to answer all of these questions. So, yes.
Vaughn, I got a question. So one thing that I've kind of noticed in reviewing this is sometimes if people might, I'm not going to say lazy is the right term, but they may just throw everything at the district level or at the LEA level And that will really skew your numbers, and people might ask why you're spending so much at the district level and not so much at the school level. So I just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, what is the most common comment that you hear about education? We're spending far too much money on those danged administrators. We need to cut down on how much we're paying administrators. There's far too much at the administration level. So if you allow things to slip into the shared expenses area by not coding them to the school level, you're just shooting yourself in the foot. Does everybody understand that? I guarantee you that they're going to look at that shared expense level, district by district, charter by charter, and try to say, draw comparisons from one school to another to say, well, why aren't you low like so-and-so over here? Or why aren't you like so-and-so over there? There will be lots of comparisons made, and I'm sorry about that, but that's what we have to report. Okay, so where do we go from here? The next step, we need to identify sources of data, okay? The October 1 count is fairly easy to understand, and that's probably the easiest piece out of the whole thing. Where do we get the percent of students for low income, for economically disadvantaged? Do you know what you're reporting that's going to show that? Where do we get the number for students with disabilities? Where do we get the number for the ELL students? And what reports are you taking in that are producing those numbers? Where are we getting the financial data from? Can anybody tell me where we're getting the financial data that we're using for this? Yeah, it's coming from your UPEF's upload. So if you give us garbage data in your upload, guess what? It's going to produce a garbage report on the other end. So please take adequate care to make sure that as you're doing that, as you're uploading that data, that it tells the story that you really want it to tell, okay? So we'll be getting you information on each of these. All of these are not all things that you deal with directly unless you're doing every system at your school. Many of them are coming through UTREX, okay? So when you upload information into UTREX, when you do free and reduced lunch applications, those are going to affect some of those numbers that are showing up on there. And so if you're outsourcing your lunch to another LEA, what's your ELL or what's your low income number going to look like? Yeah, Randy got it here, 0. You're going to have 0 low income. So how do you qualify for Title I if you've got 0 low income? Good question. Okay, there are other numbers that are in there that need to be looked at. And some of you need to look a little more carefully at who's providing the data, who's uploading that data for you. Are they doing it faithfully? Is it providing the numbers that you really want? Okay? It'd be really important for you to take the report that we're going to produce this year and go through it in great detail so that you've given it a good view and can plan for your next year's data. Because once you've uploaded your stuff and certified it, it's done. That's the story we're going to tell. So, and you're going to get less and less sympathy for uploading new files as time goes on. You guys have plenty of opportunities to look at it. You can upload files at any point in time and run a preliminary one, because anytime you upload a new file in UPEFs, it automatically overwrites the old file that was there before. So if you want to test something, you can upload it, look at the report, see if it says what you want it to say, and then you can upload another one before you certify to get that information. Got a question over here.
Vaughn, with school location, it will make some of the districts a much bigger file size. Will the UPEFs be able to handle that?
Yeah, UPEFs will be able to handle the larger file size. The problem that we're experiencing right now is we're putting something new in there called validation. And we'll talk about that more towards the end, but the validation will, last year we gave you all the heads up that there were account numbers that didn't make sense, like having a secretary in the instruction function or having a principal in the instruction function. If your principal is in teaching the music class, he's a teacher then, he's not a principal at that point, okay? So you need to use two different object codes for them. We gave out copies of a spreadsheet that showed all of the numbers that were used in 2015, and it had a thing out to the side that said whether that account was acceptable or not, and if it was not acceptable, where you should be putting that number. If you need another copy of that, email me. I can't make it ADA accessible to put up on our webpage, but I'd be happy to send you a copy of that file for you to use and to be able to check your chart of accounts and make sure that they're ending up in the right place. Because with this new validation, when you upload your file, it's going to kick back your file and say your file was not accepted and give you an error listing of all the account codes that did not match that listing. So right now, we took a small LEA, uploaded the file. It took 19 minutes to upload. Most of you will recognize that probably is either going to kill your browser or anyway. We're optimizing that. It should be up today with the new updates on it. It should be up today with the new updates on it that should make it go a lot faster. We're working through that. But I would recommend to each of you that you take last year's actual file, try uploading it as a budget file for this year just to get the error listing so you can correct your problems before you're trying to upload for the real budget. When you go to upload the real budget, you'll overwrite that file, so it shouldn't be a problem to try uploading that file. Does everybody understand that? Try uploading before you are at the actual deadline. Why would it be important to try it beforehand?
Give yourself lots of time to make corrections.
Yes, to give yourself lots of time to make the corrections, because if you've got any problems there, it is going to be a problem for you. It will check both revenues and expenditures and your balance sheet numbers. So if you're using old balance sheet codes from 3 years ago, that's going to be a problem. Make sure that you're using the latest chart of accounts. As Natalie mentioned, last year we made some major updates to the chart of accounts. What have you noticed on your revenue codes this year? Has anybody noticed anything at all? What was that now?
They're more simplified.
Yeah, they're more simplified and they're in general categories, okay? And so what they do is they tie to the appropriations that come from the legislature. Whether or not you recognize that, that is why they were changed to go that way. On your expenditure codes, you'll notice if you go and download a chart of accounts off of our website, you'll notice that with the objects, there is an extensive definition there to tell you what should be in that account and what should not. There's also extensive definitions with the functions and the revenue codes. If you notice on the revenue codes, if you have a revenue 3400, it tells you which programs can use that code. And those codes actually relate back to the appropriation level, okay? So it's important for you to stay up to date on those chart of account elements.
It says once a budget has been submitted and certified and a new one is submitted and certified after July 1st, will the LEA be considered out of compliance?
If a new budget is uploaded and certified after the 30 days after the budget is adopted, the new requirement now, and it goes into effect before any of your budgets come in, and I wonder who would have sponsored anything like that. However, you have to adopt your budget before June 30th, and you have 30 days to get that into UPES. So we have a charter school that notified me last week that their budget is being approved by their board on May 3rd. So when do they have to have it on UPES? June 3rd. Okay. So they will have theirs in, and it'll be before June 30th. So it's acceptable that they do it that way. But you have 30 days from when you, so everybody's budget will have to be in and certified by July 30th. Okay, we got a question here.
I thought your budget had to be approved by June 22nd.
That was changed in the legislature this year to be by June 30th. Okay. If you're going through truth in taxation, you have until August 17th. Okay, there's some special things for truth in taxation. Okay, you have till August 17th to hold your hearing, and then you have 30 days to get that in place. Okay, we have a dissenting comment here.
No, Vaughn, I'll simply say, unfortunately, the effective date of that bill is not until January 1st of 2019. So this year's budget is still on the June 22nd deadline.
Okay, good clarification. Say that.
This year's budget is still due June 22nd because the effective date of that bill is not till January.
Okay. And I hope everybody online got that. This year it's still June 22nd, so everybody will have to have their stuff in by July 22nd. Okay. If it's adopted by June 22nd, then you have to have it on UPES by 30 days after that. So July 22nd, we'll be able to look at all of those. If you need to upload a new version after that, you will not be compliant, okay? You did not get your budget in on time, okay? So we've had a lot of people who will throw in a garbage file and then come back 2 weeks later after the deadline and say, oh, we've had a change. We need to upload a new file. We're getting tougher and tougher on these all the time, so don't give us garbage, please. If you're not ready, don't upload. Don't try to say, oh, we were compliant because we got something in by October 1st. If you upload a new version after October 1st or after July 22nd, you did not comply, okay? Look at the data. So as that LEA looked at that data that we showed you in the other sheet and saw the 269%, they looked into it and they were able to correct their data. If we pulled a new report at this point in time, it would have shown about 70% ELL students. Prepare your boards for the initial reporting of this data. We were at a conference and looking at some, and there's a school district that's in Illinois that's looking at theirs. They've been doing school level reporting for 2 years now, and they are working with their board. They're looking at that and using it as a way to look at their school and tell which areas that they're working on, whether or not they're making progress on test scores. Some of the things that you're seeing in those numbers will tell you where you should be looking or putting resources that can be used to better uses. So prepare your board start working with them, help them to understand what it is that you're giving them. If your board members only understand the 30,000 foot view right now, you need to educate them so that they understand the 10,000 foot view of the other report that gives more data and that has those other elements in it to help them understand where those numbers are coming from. Okay? That's a mission for each of you. Okay? Learn to use the data that's in there to your advantage. You know, help them to understand where it's coming from and that you do understand what you're doing and that you're coding things appropriately. Okay, validations. We were just talking about this just a couple of minutes ago. The validations are in place. They are in place today, and so if you go to upload a file, I'd recommend that you try that and find out where your accounts are going to be kicking out. And then if you get that spreadsheet from me, it'll help you to find where you should be coding those and what's wrong with the code combination, okay? It will slow down upload files, okay? There's a question right now as to whether or not we need to, right now it's validating as the file is being uploaded. I think we're going to have to change that to be something so that it uploads to a specific area and then runs the validations afterward, because right now it's not giving a reasonable time to do that. It will give you an error listing. Tells you all of the accounts that are problems in there. So if you give it an initial run and find that there are problems, you can contact us if you think that there's something that we've missed, and we can add it to that validation list so that your report would go through if you think that it's correct and that we haven't put it in there yet. We found 2 or 3 yesterday that we've added to the list since then, just from the tests. So your testing helps us to make the tool work better for us and for you. So please do that and then report them to us if it's something that we need to fix. Okay? And don't be surprised if we tell you that maybe you need to change your account to be such and such, especially if you're using old balance sheet accounts. Okay? Do we have any questions on the school level portion?
Vaughn, has the website changed? I was trying to get into UPEFs this week and it said that the site didn't exist. upefs.schools.utah.gov. Is it just under construction? Or?
No, it's been out there all week. I've been in it almost every day. So you need to make sure that you use the HTTPS, because if you're not on the secure one, it'll tell you it doesn't exist.
Oh, okay, maybe that's
so you may have to bookmark it, because frequently when you're putting in an address in your browser, it does not go to the secure one automatically. So make sure that you use the HTTPS at the beginning of it to get to the real UPEF server.
Okay.
Other questions about this?
Going back in time a little bit, you said that you were going to back out of our reports for school level reporting data on one-time facility construction bond data stuff, right?
Yes.
But I'm also told that construction projects that are ongoing are coded as a 400 purchase property service expense now, instead of as an 800 or a 700, right? And so how will you identify which 400 expenses are construction in progress that need to be backed out?
Okay, if you look at the 400 object codes, there's a 450 for construction, and that will come out. Okay. That automatically pulls out all by itself. And it pulls out also for indirect costs and other things, because the 450 construction has been there for probably, Alan, Chris, was 10, 12 years now that we've been using the 450 object for Yeah, NCES changed that about 12 to 15 years ago, and we got that in, and everybody should be using that now. For construction, 450. There are other object codes in the 400s, 435 and different things like that, the 430s, and for contracted services, repairs and maintenance and things like that. But they're, only the 450 is being pulled out as construction. All of the 450 and all of the 700 objects, yes.
So Vaughn, will these school level reports be available in UPEFs, or how will we be able to see them before? Because I don't want them magically appearing on some website in December and we haven't had time to scrub them and look at them if that's going to be available to the whole world in December. So how will we be able to see them?
We're not sure yet. That's one of the parts that we haven't worked through just yet. So as soon as we have an answer on that, we'll be happy to get with you.
So is it possible, I know kind of the road that you've already said we're going down. I mean, these reports don't have to be posted for FY18, just an update of what we're doing.
Correct.
Would it be possible for us to use the 18 data and just do this internally and let us look at them and see what they would have looked like and scrub through them before we start posting stuff then in 19?
Yes, that is our plan, is that we'll produce the 18 reports for your use internally, for you to look at, for you to be able to dissect where the problems are in your reporting, and for you to fix those problems before we get the first round of reports that are going to be going out publicly.
So the first public reports will be FY19 data?
Yes, that is correct. Other questions?
Hey, Vaughn?
For charter schools with more than one location, this will be something entirely new. So if you have more than one campus and don't have school level numbers for your locations to use in 19, get with us and we'll make sure that we get those for you. Brett.
I just wanted to make a quick plug. Who here has legal fees, legal services? Right there shows me that people are not using the right object code. The right object code is 349, not 340. I have only 8 LEAs using 349, and I know there's a lot more than that. So in your process of cleaning up your chart of accounts, look at that.
Yeah, please make sure that you're using 349 for legal fees. Those are separate for the indirect cost calculation and have to be singled out separately. And so we need you to make sure that you're using the 349. Otherwise, it's going to be a problem for all of us. On our website, if you want to find things, you'd come down here to the financial operations area. Once you get there, click on that. It's going to take you to financial operations, and you'll notice that on here there are 3 boxes. It says applications, training, and due dates. Our presentations that we're doing today will be under that training, I believe. That's where we're planning to put them. If you're trying to get to the chart of accounts, over on the right there, you'll see there's an area that says reporting. If you come over and click on the reporting, one of the items here under the reporting is the chart of accounts. And I would recommend that you print out a new chart of accounts each year. The 19 chart of accounts will be up very, very soon. Most of it may be out there already. Let me see how much I've got out there. Maybe not as much as I had hoped. Yeah, my 19 stuff isn't out there yet. There are a few changes, but very few changes. Most of the things, if you were familiar with the old ones, if we go and look at the object codes, for example, we owe a debt of gratitude to Chris Lewis and Alan and Devin for a lot of this work here, but you'll notice that there's much more definition there. The M out at the side means that it's mandatory that you use that part of the chart of accounts. You'll notice that the 110 General District Administration salaries, it says right in it, this is a header only. Do not use that. If you try to use the 110 account or a 100 account, it's going to kick it out faster than you can think. There are general groupings that are headings that are listed there that give you more and more detail so that you can use the proper ones. What does 130 show? It's a header. Do not use. Use the 131 salary for teachers or 132 for substitutes. Okay. There are extensive descriptions here that tell you which these groups are and explains about them. So please use the chart of accounts. And if you need to learn about them, just go in and read them. It's like reading the dictionary, but it will give you some information that will be helpful to you. Do you guys have the sheet that shows the program changes for next year? It's a single 2-page sheet. Okay, yes, this one here. It will be on our webpage tomorrow also. But how many of you didn't get that one? Okay. It shows a bunch of programs that we're deleting for this year. We're cleaning up more and more each year. These are a number of old programs that are no longer funded and no longer should be used. So please make sure that you're clearing these out. If you go to use them in 19, these changes are for 2019, not for 2018. Does everybody understand that? These are for 2019, not 2018. But if you use these programs next year, they will kick out and you'll have problems. So if you're using these programs now, get them changed over where they belong. A couple of the things on there, the Roy Cohn project was only one district and only for 1 year. The performance-based compensation was a thing back in the early 2000s, has not been funded for a number of years and is gone. There's one down there, 7612 is a technology program. What does the 7 on the program number tell you? Oh, right, it's a federal program. There is not a federal technology program anymore. The 5640 there, extended day kindergarten. Why is that one going away? Because there's a program 5641 with the correct title that you should be using. So if there are programs on here you think you should still be using, contact us and we'll help you find how to get to the correct one. There's several technology ones that were used by various LEAs that should be in the digital teaching and learning. So as you look at the ones that are added there, you'll find that there's the correct program numbers there. Got it.
So what numbers are you using for the National School Program?
The National School Lunch Program, that would be 8070. If you've ever noticed on there, the school lunch programs are a cluster program. So you get money from probably 5 or 6 different sources in there, but do you have 5 or 6 different programs that you use to do your lunch? Do you buy flour out of the free and reduced, and you buy flour out of the regular school lunch program? No. You put it all in one place. So you will still have revenue codes that differentiate each of those pieces of where the money's coming from, but they all go into the school lunch program.
So it's all going to just be one program code now?
Yes.
With your commodities, would that be the same too?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you use your commodities someplace other than your lunch program?
No.
Okay, so it'd pay you to look through these. A lot of those different school lunch programs are being discontinued, but the revenue code will show where the money came from for the federal reporting.
We've been using 8079 for the fresh fruit and vegetables. Will that still be separated from the rest?
It'll be 8070.
Okay.
Okay. Other questions on the chart of accounts changes for next year?
Vaughn, could I just, over here?
Yeah.
Just know, if you're wondering what program to use, just look at your allotment memo, and it has the program number on it.
Yeah, isn't that surprising? Has the allotment memo has the program number, and what else does it have on there? Oh, it has the revenue code number to go with it. Sorry, sarcasm's dripping.
Hey, Vaughn, will you go over the changes to, is it contracted services or purchase services? Where we asked for a breakout of like legal and accounting and management.
Sure.
I think there were changes to travel. Did you guys already cover that one?
We haven't done that. We'll go over that right now. 340 under contracted services. We're asking now that you have a further breakdown. You'll notice that if you're contracting for your teachers, there are a number of charter schools that said we don't have any teacher salaries. We just contract with a employee leasing program, and they're all a contracted service. We have you some new codes here that you can break those down. So if you're doing that, we've got your teacher salaries and teacher benefits, your administration and your business services there. You do need to break those out using those numbers if you're doing employee leasing. So we need that information whether you're leasing them or not. So there's also some here in the repairs and maintenance to break it down between non-technology and technology repairs, as well as custodial services. You've got rental for if you're leasing buildings and different things like that. Yes. Got a question coming here before we get into the transportation codes.
If you're contracting for substitute teachers with a third-party service, where would that be charged?
That would be under the contracted services, but you'll notice that you need to also yeah, you'd list those as one of the 400 series, probably 430. And you'll notice that when you do your indirect costs for anything that's contracted, you get credit for the first 25,000 there, and anything over 25,000 you have to list as an excluded expenditure. Okay? In the 500 series here, we made a number of changes to the 500s. So your student transportation pieces for school districts, you're probably familiar with those already. Probably the biggest change here was in the travel piece. Let's go to the 580s. Okay, so under the 580 here for staff travel, you'll notice that there's extensive description here about the 580. The 580 is for staff travel, okay? If you've got student travel, let's see, where does it? Oh, yeah. So it talks about the different codes to be using here for registration fees and for the conference fees, okay? So please look through these and use them appropriately. may not be quite as simple as you thought it was in the past. Okay. Other questions on the chart of accounts? The functions also have extensive definitions there and should help you in making the correct choices there. Any other questions on chart of accounts?
Nope, my bad.
You said contracted substitutes would be in the 400s.
In the 300s,
Okay.
340s.
But you said 400s, but 320 says contracted instructional services.
Okay, that'd be a good one, 320.
Okay.
Usually, though, the 320s are more when you're bringing in someone. You'll notice that it says professional services there. If you're bringing in professional substitutes that have maybe a teaching license, maybe I'd consider that maybe, but I would just count that as a contracted service. I would not try to put it as educational services, because usually that's bringing in someone for like a staff training type of thing. These are professional services, not just contracted services. Other questions? We've got one over here.
Got it. I will not answer.
The question was, what does the M stand for? The M out to the side means that it's mandatory that you code to that level. You can't just put it in as 300. 300 will not fly, okay? Yeah, and that is effective for 2018. All of these are effective for 2018. So if you've got things that are coded in the wrong place, you need to go back and correct them before you've...
Go over the breakouts of the student travel.
Sure. Okay. So as you're looking at the student travel, you want to be over here in the probably the 517 if you're sending them on an overnight field trip. Day field trips where you go out and come back the same day are 518. Okay.
That says if we wish to see more detail, but then it has an M on it.
Yeah.
I don't want to see more detail.
So we could use 510 then.
No, you should still use 517, 518. If you wish to see more detail, we keep getting requests from the legislature about that kind of stuff, so you may not wish to give that kind of detail. However, the M's out there for a reason. I can take the if you wish to see more detail off of it for you. Still use it, please. Other questions on the chart of accounts? Okay, make sure you read through this and it'll help you in the long run, please. Okay, the next one is that for 2019, there are going to be some changes to the APR. We've talked to a number of LEAs, and this is where we're going for the next year. It'll change some pretty significantly. In general, it's just organization of where the programs show up in the APR. Many of them are not affected, but other ones are. The changes won't change which program numbers you're using, but just where they land on which page, okay? The summary section on the first page will change to make the other accommodate the pages that are changing. We'll be eliminating 3 pages and bringing in 2 new ones. So on the first schedule, there's a column there for tort liability for school districts that had a property tax that was for tort liability. You should have all of that gone. If you still have balances left in that, put it in as a committed on your balance sheet to carry over from year to year, and then use just a general program to pay those fees out of, okay? But that column will be going away. The special education section and the CTE section will not have any changes made to them. They'll still be just exactly as you're used to seeing them now. In the past, the pages on the APR, whether you recognize them or not, were grouped by the appropriation sections from the legislature. They used to have a section that was called related to the basic. They had a section that was called special populations. They had another section that was one-time and new programs, different things like that. They've been flipping things around back and forth between those so much that we can't keep those with the proper columns. And so we were getting a lot of questions about those. So we're going to change how those are listed on there. And many of them had federal programs going in the middle of those. So if you were looking at adult ed, you would see that there were several federal adult ed programs on the special populations page. And they had no relation to special populations other than other adult ed ones were on that same page. Or charter schools, there were several federal programs listed there that were no longer applicable. They don't have a federal startup program anymore. For about 5 years, they had federal charter school startup grants. And then they also had the federal dissemination program for 10 years that is all gone now, and no money is coming in for that. So the legislature has changed where those appropriations are listed, and many of the programs no longer exist. So there were, on the special populations page and related to the basic, there were about 10 columns that should have been blank every year. And so, because the programs no longer exist. Some programs are so small that it wasn't worth your time to put them where they really belong. And so we're going to group all of those small ones on a separate column that'll be called other programs. And so we'll explain how that'll show up. If the statewide appropriation was under $1 million statewide, by the time you break it down by LEA, some of the charter schools were getting like $18. And so it just is not worth having you do a separate column for that $18 and try and break that out for us. So the new organization will be a separate schedule that's called Other State Programs. And all of the state ones that are appropriated from the legislature will be on that Other State Programs page. Then there will be federal programs other than the ESSA programs will be on Other Federal Programs page. It'll be much smaller than the state programs page. And then the ESSA programs will be on a separate schedule still. The non-instructional and the capital and debt service will be combined into a single schedule that'll be entitled Non-Instructional Programs, because the capital outlay and the debt service are not instructional programs. There was a time when we were doing everything by hand back in the old days. I can still remember filling out an APR when you had to roll it into a typewriter and type the numbers in. That's how ancient I am. But in those days, they were having to compare. There were some tax rates that they had to compare and make sure that school districts were levying enough taxes to participate in certain programs. And so it was easy for the USOE staff at that time, it wasn't USBE, it was USOE. So it was easy for them to take the totals off of those schedules to compare to make sure that the taxing efforts were meeting the minimum qualifications for various programs. That's no longer the case. We can add 2 or 3 columns from a spreadsheet and make them come up with those numbers without requiring a separate column or a separate spreadsheet. So we're going to combine those all on a single page now. The old NCLB will be retitled Every Student Succeeds Programs. Because we have to report these to the federal government as a separate report, we're going to keep those on a separate page just for ease for us. But you'll find that those will, all of the old NCLB programs or the new ones that they have under Every Student Succeeds will be on a separate schedule, okay? We are trying to keep the old lettering thing, so there will be a lot of gaps in there. You've noticed that there were gaps already because there were old program schedules in there for different things that have been eliminated over the years. So there's not every one of them in there. The special populations page, the adult high school completion and basic skills, state corrections, enhancements for students at risk, youth in custody, and enhancements for accelerated students will move to the other state program schedule, okay? The 17 and under high school completion, at-risk regular, centennial scholarships, interventions for student success, at-risk MESA, at-risk gang prevention, highly impacted schools, and international baccalaureate will no longer be on any schedule. They're just being deleted, okay? Several of these, the 17 and under high school completion, last year not one LEA used that column at all. The at-risk regular should be under the interventions for student success group, as well as the other at-risk programs should all be under that EARS program. So you'll notice the old 5335 program number that was the old at-risk program is being deleted. You should be coding everything to the 5336 program that's there now, okay? You can keep these in these old programs as long as you map them to the 5336 for the APR, okay? You can still use the old program numbers if you want to at your LEA, if you need to for budgeting purposes or administrative things, but you need to remember that for the APR purposes when you send them in, this will be for 19, remember, that they need to be remapped to a different place. Any questions on that?
Hey, Vaughn. So with that, if there were some that had maybe a balance that was carrying forward in those, is that going to roll to the new 5336 program?
It will.
Okay.
Okay, the adult basic federal, the EL civics, TANF, prison and institutionalized, those are all federal programs, and so they will be going to the other federal programs schedule. The gifted and talented, advanced placement, and concurrent enrollment should be collapsed into the enhancement for accelerated students column. Okay, same thing as what we said before. You can still use those old program numbers if you want to separate those out, but as far as reporting back in, they need to be collapsed into that accelerated enhancement for accelerated students column. Okay? Any questions on that? Everybody knows how to map things in UPES. Okay, the restricted state or federal, driver education behind the wheel, charter school local replacement, charter school startup, and charter school mentoring, school land trust, school nurses, and educator salary adjustments will go to the other state schedule. Okay? This will happen without you doing anything. The driver's education classroom, UPass, charter school, federal startup, pilot programs, contingency funds, online summative test, computer adaptive testing, ELL family literacy centers, suicide prevention, and anti-bullying will all be deleted. Okay? Everybody understand that? The driver's ed classroom should be showing up in your regular education program if it's being held during the day. The UPass hasn't been funded for a couple of years, and the federal charter startup, like we said, is gone, and there's no new money coming out under that. All of these either are no longer funded or they're so small that they need to go under the other state column. Okay? The enhancements for accelerated students on this schedule was a duplicate of the one over on the special population schedule. We heard about that from several of you, and that was just our mistake. Sorry, we got overzealous and put it in two places. The restricted state and federal also, the following programs are just changing their name. The legislature rebranded them. The instructional technology will now be called Digital Teaching and Learning, okay? And the extended day kindergarten has been retitled as Early Learning. Is that correct, Jamie? Early Interventions. I'll correct that, learning to interventions. And critical languages has been collapsed. It used to say critical languages and dual immersion. It's now just going to be flat out dual immersion, okay? So if you see these title changes, please don't be shocked. That's just what's happening, okay? On the one-time and other, the teacher materials and supplies for the last 2 years, those have been an ongoing program, so they're not one-time anymore. The math science teacher recruitment, USTAR, Beverly Taylor Sorensen, and the library books and electronics resources will go over to the other state programs, okay? The performance-based compensation, capital tours, PGEP, paraeducator funding, and student leadership skills, either those are no longer funded or they're under $1 million statewide, and so they're going, if you still use them, they will go to the other state column and will show up there, or there will not be a separate column for them on any schedule. Okay. Any of the deleted programs that still have appropriations either go where we've directed or become a part of the other state or the other federal. Okay. Like we said, several of the deleted programs either are no longer funded at all or they're under the $1 million and will end up going to the other state and other federal. The residual debt service and capital projects and building reserve columns just moved to the non-instructional schedule. Please note for the school districts, this is a program report, not a fund report. So this doesn't have to match to your capital outlay fund total amount. It's the programs. You may have items that you've coded to your capital outlay fund that ended up on a different program schedule if you're buying equipment through a program. They'll retain their normal character. It's still the same things. They're just changing which schedule they land on. And it'll make it easier for people to read because they won't have so many different schedules to get there. On the ESSA programs, you'll notice in the past that there was a prior year and current year, and you didn't even populate the prior year piece. We're getting rid of that. All of those programs will be separated by the new grants program. It will handle that. The Title I SIG, these are the new programs under the ESSA. Title II, Supporting Effective Instruction. Title III, English Language Learners. Title IV, 21st Century Schools. That's different from what you've had in the past. Title V, Innovative Programs. Title VI, American Indian and Hawaiian Native is a new one under the ESSA programs. You did not have that under NCLB. Title VII, Impact Aid, and Title IX, Homeless Children and Youth. That used to be called McKinney-Vento under the old NCLB programs. But those will be the new titles that show up there. You'll continue to use the same program. You'll still use the old McKinney-Vento, but we'll be getting a new program name piece for those programs that'll be coming out soon. So on the new APR, you'll have a Schedule A, which is the general education schedule. You'll have a Schedule B that's the special education one, just like you've had in the past. Schedule C will still be the career and technology schedule. Schedule D will be the other state programs. Schedule E will be the other federal programs. Then it'll jump to Schedule J, which will be the non-instructional programs, and Schedule L, the Every Student Succeeds Act programs. Okay, does everybody understand that? So we're going from 9 schedules down to 7. Any questions on the new APR structure? Okay.
You're still expecting the total revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balances on the APR to tie to the AFR and our financials?
Yes, that is our expectation.
So when you've used the word deleted in here, it's really just not deleting, but changing to a different place.
Correct. Those, when it says deleted on there, those are programs that you should no longer be using, or if they still are a program and that are on our chart of accounts, they will automatically be directed, that program number, to go to the other state programs or other federal programs.
So Vaughn, just to clarify, if we've mapped our programs correctly, the APR will turn out correctly, right?
That is exactly right. If you've mapped your programs correctly already, it should be a non-event for you, other than knowing where to look to get those columns, okay? The APR itself will still pull all of that information and pull it into the correct place. Where we're going to run into problems is if you've still got an old 5335 program and that you don't remap it to go to 5336, then that will cause you a problem when you go to upload your file.
So does UPEFS, as it exists today, have in it the report that shows which programs go to which schedule?
You can see on there where they go. If you go to your mapping section and go to programs, you can highlight all of those and bring them into an Excel spreadsheet, and then you can find those relationships fairly easily. We've produced a report that shows those a couple of times and sent those out previously. If you need another one, let us know and we'll be happy to email it to you. It's fairly easy to just highlight all of those that shows your current mappings and those right there. And then we can show you where the chart of accounts is mapping those to, yes. Other questions on the APR? One of the beauties of UPEFS is that because you're submitting a single file, there is not a way where your APR and your AFR should not come out with the same revenues and expenditures, because everything that's listed in the AFR also has a landing place in the APR. So it covers all of those all at once automatically. Other questions? Okay. Any questions on the school level reporting or the chart of accounts, either one? What are you going to do about validations? What are you going Okay, Chris is telling the truth. He says he's going to wait till 19 and look at it then. Yeah, you will need those for your 18 reporting for your actuals in October, and your 19 budget will also be going through those. So I highly recommend a test beforehand so that you get some time to correct those before you get to the end and run into problems. Brett? July 22nd is the last day that you can submit your budget, yes. It will be validated whether you planned ahead or not. It will. Yes, what your board does is your board approves a budget. The validation only applies to the account codes that you use. If you've used improper combinations, it will stop you from uploading your budget, even if your board has approved it.
So the last year, I think, our board had to go into UPEFs and hit some buttons, so you don't need to do that anymore?
No, they still need to go in and certify the report.
Oh, certify, yeah.
Yes.
That's the other word. Sorry.
Yeah, certify is different from validations. Brett, get that to Jamie.
Hey, Vaughn, who can certify?
Oh, that's a really good question. Who can certify? Who can certify your reports? Someone who's either a business administrator, a superintendent, a board chair, a director of a charter school. Management companies and CPAs cannot certify a report, any report. Okay. Can I repeat that again? Management companies and CPAs cannot certify a report for you, ever, ever, ever. Let me say that one more time. Management companies cannot certify any report for you, ever. Okay, let's hear your question.
So my thought last year was that one of the board people had to certify, not me. So now you're saying the business manager can certify?
Business managers cannot.
Okay, because
business administrators in school districts.
It's just language.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Vaughn, can you share passwords?
Okay, my rule of thumb, and Jamie, put your fingers in your ears. You can share your password with anyone that you would share your toothbrush with. That should tell you no one. You don't share it with anyone. Not your board chair, not your anyone. Don't share your password. There's a reason why you have a password and why you have an account number or account name. It should be yours. It says that it's your work. Okay? Other questions on that? Got another one? Who can send in bank changes? Brett, do you want to answer that one? Can I change my bank and get it effective for this month?
Wow. Bank changes. Where do you even start with that? Jamie does a lot with that as well. But Jamie, when do you have to have your bank changes in? Let me kind of tell you the process. Payments start being processed the first day of the month. And that's for each grant, program, anything that you want to deal with. And so if you send it to us on the 5th day of the month, there's already been 4 days that we've been processing payments for you. And we can't go back and fix that. to fit to your new account. So we have to wait until the end of the following month to change your bank. So it can take anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks to almost a month and a half. So when you send in your banks, when you want to change your bank, have it in the last week of the month, and then it could possibly be that following month that we have it in there. People that can sign on it. Who's authorized to sign for the banks? Those who are authorized to sign checks, or who's authorized to that account, can submit those forms to us, can sign that EFT or ACH form. Besides those people, that we cannot receive those forms from them. We will not accept them. The board chair has to approve that as well. I have to receive, and I'm the one that reviews every one of them. And if I don't receive an email from your board chair saying that they want to change their bank account, then it doesn't happen. And if everything isn't filled out properly, it doesn't happen until you give me a complete form. And I usually wait until you give me the complete form. Sometimes I'll be nice and say, hey, you didn't fill it out right. But if I don't receive a complete form, I'll just wait until you give me a complete form, because I believe that you have enough knowledge that if there's a blank line and you didn't fill it out, that you know that there's a blank line. So every once in a while I'll check and make sure, but I just kind of feel that you know that everything should be filled out when I tell you that everything should be filled out.
Can my management company send in my bank change for me?
No, we have a site called Move It. Has anybody here heard of Move It? There's a lot of people. Move It is a secure site where we can receive a lot of that secure information, because it does have your bank account information on it. Business administrators, directors, and board members can have access to that, but management companies, third parties, cannot have access to that.
So can I email my bank change form to you?
No emails. I will not accept it. Even if you email me everything that I need, I will not accept it through email. Unless it's through Move It, I will delete the email as if it didn't happen. Only through Move It, I will accept it.
Jamie's got a question. How come you're being so hard on the bank accounts?
We want to secure your information as much as you want it secured. Has anybody had their emails hacked before?
Yeah, actually, just this last week, and this might, excuse me, scammers are getting very sophisticated. We've suffered a breach where we've had direct deposit forms submitted with someone's valid email address that is our own email address, that's gone through all of the proper stages to change the bank account into which their funds go. And then we started to receive some phone calls saying, where's my money? It was because those had been processed, and it was all through legitimate accounts. Yeah. Pretty scary these days. We have to be very careful.
Yeah, anything where you're transferring money or direct deposit, I'd recommend highly to you that you start toughening your schedules on that so that it goes through some verification process. It was very easy to do things. The system is supposed to require a pre-note, but a lot of people were forgetting that pre-note step to make sure. Brett, have you ever received a call saying, "Where's my money?"
We've received quite a few of those, and we've actually had to handwrite a check for them because they forgot to change their bank account information. I mean, it's not my responsibility to know everybody's checking account, their banking account information. I believe it falls on everyone in here to know their own bank account, and if it changes, I'm not held responsible to change it for them. I don't know when they're going to change their bank. Do you know when they're going to change their bank, Vaughn?
No, I don't. We had an LEA that recently got notified their bank got bought out by another bank, and they told them, "We're changing your bank, and you have 2 months to get all of your stuff set up. For the first month, we'll automatically transfer everything for you." And the LEA never bothered to tell us that their bank had been bought out. And the second month, they didn't get their transfer, and they wanted to know where their money was. "Well, our bank got bought out. Why didn't you change that?" We don't know. We can't read your minds, and we don't read your mail. So if your bank is changing, you need to let us know, and in enough time for it to be fixed and go to the right place.
One more item. If you have a loan through us as well, you need to change your ACH so we can take your money as well.
There are a large number of charter schools that have loans that go through a particular bank, and when you have your building loan going through that particular bank, they automatically every time have you sign a thing saying that you cannot change your bank account without going through them first. And your board members signed that saying that it was an irrevocable trust. That means they can't revoke that. That means you cannot change your account. What that bank does is they take your monthly allotment memo, take out your loan payment, and then transfer the balance of it to your other bank. If you're changing something with that group and you have that irrevocable trust where your funds are going through U.S. Bank for your loan payment on your building, when you want to change banks, you talk to U.S. Bank, not to us, because we don't see anything beyond your initial direct deposit going straight to U.S. Bank. Anything beyond there, you have to work out with them. Okay, does everybody from the charter schools understand that? Other bank stuff, Brett? No. Okay. So who can sign for the bank change?
Can third-party people sign it?
No. Okay. Can you tell that one's a sore subject for us? Any other questions that you have about UPES or about the chart of accounts or your financial reporting? I'm grateful that Lincoln pointed out to us that that doesn't apply until 2019. We'll at least get all of our budgets in on time this year. Any other questions? We'll make sure that the due date piece on our schedule gets updated for that.
Are there any updates or changes for indirect costs?
The indirect cost changes that occurred for last year, we're just getting through the first full cycle. One of the things that's been a real problem recently is that you need to print off the final page of that report that has the rates on it, and you need to sign it and send that back in. If you haven't sent that back in, we're going to bump your indirect cost rates back down to 0. Because if we don't have a signed agreement in hand, we can't allow you to charge indirect cost rates. So if you applied for indirect costs and you certified the report, you still have to print off that last page, get it signed, and send it back to us. A few things that changed in the indirect cost piece. You have to list your legal costs separately. They're not a part of the indirect costs. They are excluded costs. So if you use the 349 legal fees object code, it will automatically come out. If we didn't see an exclusion for the 349, or we didn't see the 349, we asked you, do you have any legal costs? We had several LEAs tell us no. So we went to transparency. Guess what we saw in their consulting fees? Law firms. And we asked them, why do you have fees going, why are you paying this law firm but you have no legal fees? Oh, well, we had some, but we didn't think it was important. Yes, it is important. You guys are signing, when you certify that, you say that everything in there is true and correct. So please make sure that you're really following through and getting all of those pieces taken out like they appropriately should. So that please use the 349 legal fees object code.
So Vaughn, if the expenditures are properly coded to an account that automatically gets pulled out, do we have to also go into the indirect cost tool and list them there, or can we just know that you will pull them out?
If they have been appropriately coded, they've already been pulled out. You will still have an excluded cost piece that you have to go in and list any of the pieces that are separate, and we could go in and take a look at that. And you also have to do the contracts and subawards over $25,000. So you're going to have to do those two schedules every year, but you would not have to list the legal costs if you went to the proper one.
Are there entire functions which you're excluding as well that we wouldn't have to put in there, like the board and the business administrator?
They are already being taken to the right place for those calculations.
So we won't need to add them to the indirect cost tool?
You will have to list the people that are to be excluded. Let me pull that up here. Does this look familiar to anyone?
I'll kind of answer Alan's question, because he's mentioning that certain codes, object codes, are used for business administrators, superintendents, things like that, but it's not being used correctly by everybody, and we can't verify that. And so that's why we have you go in and exclude those items for the governance piece, so that it is verified by you guys and not by us.
Okay, Randy says we can look at his indirect cost things for the example. So, okay, when you come in, there is the excluded cost review. And so what happens is you're going to have to go in, and it tells you right here that the things that need to be excluded are the legal fees, construction, advertising, all of these that are listed there. If you've used the correct object code, it has already eliminated those for you. If there are other things that need to be eliminated, you need to list them. And it has pulled them out by object code. So you can see here, all of these ones starting with a 60 are part of an internal service fund. Because they're part of an internal service fund, it has automatically excluded those costs. You can see here on this part that even though it's part of Fund 10, it's pulled out because it's a 700 object code. This is a listing of everything that it is pulling out automatically out of your UPEF's submission based on those codes that are listed up on the top. Okay? So under this excluded cost review, that's for you to be able to review it. You cannot enter and you cannot take things out of this group. This is automatically done by UPES, okay? Under the unallowable costs, let's go there. Okay, so under here, you'll notice that it says that you cannot charge bad debts. What bad debts do you have? School lunch stuff, where people have not paid for charged lunches. Any contingencies using Object Code 850, entertainment, fines and penalties, general governance. General governance is the big one here, and that's where most of your stuff comes from. So what they say under general governance is the piece that is required by the state, they're not going to allow you to have as part of your indirect cost calculation. So in the state code, it says that you have to have a superintendent or a director, and it says you have to have a business manager or a business administrator. So their offices and those people who report directly to them have to be listed here with their account code, and we have to pull those out of there. So there's a number of costs there that'll be listed, and for a lot of different, each of these benefit things, different things for health insurance, unemployment, and they're listing line by line, item by item. If you want to put those in a spreadsheet and send them to us with the whole thing in there for everybody who's in the same code, you can do that and just put in one line item for the whole code and say, see spreadsheet, and we'll take your spreadsheet and attach it as documentation. So it goes through and lists their salaries, their benefits, every different piece in there. Yes, you'll have to continue to enter that every year, okay? Mostly for the general governance. Brett?
So is there any risk of something we put in the unallowed costs that's also in one of the excluded accounts that they will be deducted twice?
There's a possibility that you would do that, but we ask you to check your excluded costs, and we go through and try to check those too. So when we look at those and see what your total amount that was excluded under the excluded cost piece, if we're seeing things in your unallowable costs that have those codes, we'll call you back and say, hey, you've got some things there we think they're incorrect. Would you please review that and do a new submission?
So if we had a legal contract that exceeded the $25,000 that was coded correctly, we shouldn't need to add that to the excluded cost because it's already being excluded once, and if we added it, it would potentially be excluded twice.
If you have a legal contract, and first of all, if you have a legal contract, it should be under the excluded costs if you coded it appropriately, okay? Under the unallowable costs, if you put it in there again and put the 439 object code, we're gonna contact you and let you know that you've excluded it twice. Okay, if we go over to the contracts and subawards and you've listed it again, we would contact you. We had a bunch of people that we had to contact this last year because they put their construction contracts in there and they were in 450 or 700 object codes, and we had to tell them, hey, you've listed this twice, so please see that it's over in the excluded cost schedule and that it's already been eliminated, and ask them to go back and resubmit their file.
So it is important to review that excluded cost review before you enter your unallowed, so you're not doubling stuff
so
up.
that you're not doing it twice, yes. Yeah, we had one LEA really complain because they went in and they were doing the contracts and subawards, and they went every line item, and then they called up to complain about it, and he said, it's taking me weeks to finish this. I said, weeks? How can it take weeks? You know? So we looked at his thing, and he was listing every contract regardless of the dollar amount. We said, did you see the over 25,000? He said, well, it's a contract. So we listed it. No, it's not going to do anything because it's not over $25,000. So you're spending all this time entering all of this data that doesn't even matter. He said, oh, you mean we only have to list those that go over 25? Yes, that's what it says. So please read the instructions on each of these. You see the unallowable costs. You do have to go in and put in the general governance pieces there, okay? Under the square footage by building, right here in the piece, it tells you that this is optional. If you want to enhance your indirect cost, you can go through, but you have to measure out each part of your building, have all of the square footage, and encode it by function for each room that's in your building. Okay, the hallways count as instructional space, but you could show that you have a 150 square foot office for the business person, if it's 10 by 15, but then you're going to have to do all of the pieces of the building. You're going to have to show the custodial. You're going to have to show everything. We did that for one large district, and they had a huge warehouse, which counts in there. That was the only reason that they got anything at all out of it, and they got 0.03% out of it by having a 160,000 square foot warehouse. So unless you've got something that's really huge, then you're not going to get anything by doing that one. Unused leave paid at termination. This is only for payments that you make that are not coded directly to a program that you pay people when they leave. So if you had a thing where you pay people out their vacation when they leave, or some sick leave incentive that you pay when they leave for not taking their sick leave, if you take your vacation and say, okay, you have 5 days, you're leaving on Friday, I'll just run your payroll through the following Friday, that does not count. That's not unused leave paid at termination. If you terminate them on that Friday and then pay them the equivalent of 5 days pay, then that counts as unused leave paid at termination, okay? Contracts and subawards. This is only for those that are over $25,000. So if you have a contract for substitute teachers, you put in the whole amount of the contract. They will subtract out the first $25,000 for you. You list the whole amount that you paid them, okay? Don't subtract out the first $25,000 yourself. This one you will have to do every year. Do not enter construction contracts, because if they're coded correctly, they've already been eliminated over in the excluded cost piece, okay?
Will you consider adding the ability to either copy and paste or upload to these schedules?
Somewhere in time that will happen. Is it our top priority right now? It is not. But if you send us a spreadsheet, you can put in a single line item. I know that for the contracts and subawards, it would really help a lot. Okay. Last one here is the Certify and Submit.
You said we put the full amount here, not just the increment over 25.
Okay, the question was, do you put the full amount or just the part over 25,000? You put the full amount. It is going to subtract 25,000 out of that before it uses it in the calculation. Full amount, okay? The last tab here is Certify and Submit. Yes.
There is a question. What object codes should be for background checks and audits?
I'll get back to that in a few minutes, okay? Certify and Submit. Someone who can certify the report, like the business administrator or the director of a school, should go in. It brings up each of those sections and shows what's been input there, so that they can review and look through all of those items and see what's in those. And then they come over here and click on the Certify. They also have the View Report. Many of you don't have the view report because you're the submitter, not the certifier, okay? When it brings up the report, it brings up all of the schedules that you used to see. There's the schedule that shows the excluded, the indirect, and the direct, all of those, plus there's other pages, and there's also a part here where you can export it to either PDF or Excel. If you export that to Excel, that's the easiest to work with. It will export that report and give it to you in Excel. The third page of this, we need that third page printed out and signed by someone who's eligible to do that. When it comes up in Excel, it will put tabs across the bottom for all 3 pages. Each page will be on its own separate page. So here's that schedule, and you can go through and check those amounts to make sure that the right amounts are showing up in the right place. That's used for the calculation that's done on the second page. And then the third page is the actual contract. It lists the rates right there. And down at the bottom, it has the place for the signature to be sent back in. So that is an important step, an important thing for you to do each year. Other questions on the indirect cost piece?
Hey, Vaughn. So we've had numerous people making comments on the YouTube channel that they would really like a UPEFs training. So is there anyone here that would like kind of like a beginner's, never done anything in UPEFs training before? We have 3 or 4 people online, so I think we'll probably put one together. If you have staff within your LEAs or groups that would like to get some more in-depth training, I know those of you who have done this for a long time maybe don't want to sit through that. We'll either work on putting one together, like an online training, or else having a group come here and kind of mess around on the system. We'll get that put together before budgets are due, so probably within the next month, just to give you the opportunity to ask some more in-depth questions. So just watch for that.
Yeah, we're happy to do that training. Any other questions? Okay. We'll stay around for a little bit. I think is there anybody who wants to do anything else before we let them loose for lunch?
I don't think so. Our plan, because we've advertised the time and we know certain people are going to be joining the WebEx or the broadcast, we'll start up again at 1. So just be back here at 1. We're doing the kind of the charter school update. We're also going to go over the new grants management system and requirements that we need from all of you in order to get the grants management system up and running. And then the legislative estimates, Jamie will do the MSP changes and updates. So that's the plan for this afternoon. Thanks for your attendance. Appreciate it.